Do-it-yourself Easter eggs are one thing. The decorative eggs Elizabeth Palmer is about to show us are something else entirely.
One quiet morning, in a small Midwestern kitchen, a man almost made the worst financial mistake of his life. He had planned to melt down a strange gold egg he bought at a yard sale, hoping to sell the metal for a quick profit. But that egg, small enough to fit in his palm, carried a secret stretching back to the days of Russian emperors. You heard me right. It was one of the lost Imperial Fabergé eggs, hidden for over 80 years. It had vanished during revolutions and wars, whispered about in collectors' circles, and somehow ended up next to a box of chocolate cupcakes in Middle America. But how does a symbol of absolute imperial power end up gathering dust next to cupcakes in Middle America in the first place? The Imperial Dream Machine. Imagine receiving an Easter gift that costs more than most people's lifetime earnings. Not a car or a mansion, but a single object small enough to fit in your palm, so perfect in its detail that it felt alive. The story of the missing Faberge egg, found near cupcakes in Middle America, begins long before that kitchen moment, in the echoing halls of the Russian imperial palaces, where Easter was more than a holiday. It was a stage where power, love, and unmatched craftsmanship collided, wrapped in gold and gemstones. In the spring of 1887, Tsar Alexander III wanted to surprise his wife, Maria Feodorovna, with something extraordinary. Their marriage was not just a union of royal bloodlines, but a bond of shared tragedies, political storms, and the constant weight of empire. But behind the heavy crowns and diplomatic dinners, Alexander simply wanted to bring his wife a moment of joy each Easter, and that meant commissioning the House of Fabergé. Peter Carl Fabergé was not just a jeweler. He was a magician of metal and stone, running a workshop that blurred the line between artistry and engineering. In that workshop, under the soft glow of oil lamps, master craftsmen bent over tiny parts, setting diamonds smaller than a grain of sand, polishing gold until it reflected the faces of the men who shaped it. The Third Imperial Egg was their creation for that year, and it was a masterpiece that even today feels like something out of a fairy tale. Shaped in yellow gold and standing just over 3 inches tall, it opened to reveal a surprise hidden inside: a Vacheron Constantin watch, white enamel dial, and gold hands, ready to tell time to the Empress whenever she wished to open her treasure. The egg itself rested on a golden pedestal with lion paw feet, its body wrapped in blue sapphires and set with rose-cut diamonds, each stone meticulously chosen for its clarity and brilliance. The clasp, designed like a diamond-studded bow, clicked shut with the softest sound, a reminder that even the smallest detail mattered in Fabergé's world. Fabergé eggs were not simply gifts. They were statements of absolute power, each more intricate than the last, each designed to showcase the wealth and reach of the Russian Empire, and the imperial family adored them. These eggs became annual traditions, turning Easter into a celebration of luxury and mechanical wonder, with the court gathering to watch as Maria Feodorovna discovered the latest hidden marvel within her new egg. It might be a tiny swan that could swim in water, or a miniature portrait that sprang up with a twist of the base, or, like this egg, a watch so finely made that it became a second jewel inside the first.
Which went dark with the Russian Revolution, come back with quality and brilliance and design and style that can't be matched anywhere in the world.
The imperial court, draped in silk and filled with the soft sound of laughter and the clink of crystal glasses, saw these eggs as symbols of stability, of a world that would always remain under the control of the Romanovs. Yet the craftsmen in Fabergé's workshop knew the truth. They were building more than pretty objects. They were capturing a moment in time when an empire believed in its own permanence. Every hinge, every gemstone, every stroke of the enamel brush was a whisper that this era of opulence would last forever. But these eggs were also fragile, not only in their delicate construction, but in what they represented. While the Third Imperial Egg stood on its pedestal, the world outside the palace walls was changing. Revolutions brewed, whispers of discontent grew louder, and the empire that commissioned such treasures was heading toward its own unraveling. It is almost haunting to think that this egg, designed to bring joy, would one day disappear, lost to wars, revolutions, and the chaos of a world that no longer had a place for emperors and empresses. And yet it survived. The egg that once sat on Maria Feodorovna's dressing table, that once marked an Easter morning with wonder, would vanish into the shadows of history, only to reappear over 80 years later in the most unexpected place, nearly mistaken for scrap metal. The dream machine of Imperial Russia, so carefully crafted, was about to collide with a different world, where its fate would depend on an ordinary man with no royal blood, no palaces, and no empire. But this fairy tale of imperial opulence was about to collide with the most violent revolution in history, and that collision would scatter these treasures to the winds. From palace to chow. When the Bolsheviks stormed the Winter Palace in 1917, they weren't just overthrowing a dynasty. They were tearing open the vaults of an empire that had hoarded treasures for centuries. In those dark, echoing halls, the Faberge eggs stood like silent witnesses to a world about to collapse, each one wrapped in gold and gems, and a fragile reminder of what Russia had been before the revolution. The new Soviet government saw these eggs not as art, but as leverage. Their policy of treasures into tractors turned the luxury of the czars into tools for the workers, selling off imperial jewels to fund the industrial dreams of the new regime. Lenin and his government needed hard currency, and the treasures of the Romanovs, including the eggs Fabergé had crafted by hand, became bargaining chips on the world stage. In 1922, an inventory in Moscow listed these eggs, each recorded and sealed away, a cold ledger where priceless history was reduced to weight and carats. Somewhere in that list, the Third Imperial Egg was noted, a small entry in a document that would become one of the last official sightings of this masterpiece. From there, the trail began to fade, and the egg slipped into the fog of history, vanishing as the Soviet Union rose and the world moved toward another war. For the Soviets, the sale of treasures was survival, but for collectors, it was a chance to hold something that once sat on the desk of an empress. In the chaos of shifting borders and black market deals, many eggs found their way into private collections, their stories splintering as ownership passed from one hand to another. By the 1960s, the trail of the Third Imperial Egg had gone completely cold. Collectors whispered about its possible locations, but no one could say for sure where it had landed. Then, in 1964, the Parker Burnett auction house in New York quietly listed a gold watch in egg form case for sale. It was a small, elegant piece with a Vacheron Constantin watch inside. Later, it was sold for $2,450 to a buyer who had no idea of its origin. The catalogue entry was plain, with a short description, no mention of its imperial past, and no hint that it was one of the lost Faberge eggs. Think about that for a moment. An object once made for an empress, crafted with sapphires and diamonds in a workshop that could take months to perfect a single hinge, was now changing hands in America for the price of a used car. All those years in the hands of revolutionaries, collectors, and auctioneers, and not a single person recognized what they had. The egg spent decades drifting through America, packed in boxes, moved from one household to another, sitting quietly in kitchens and display cabinets, its true identity lost in the fog of time. What would you do if you discovered you had unknowingly bought a stolen imperial treasure? Would you sell it, keep it, or call a historian to confirm the impossible? For decades, this egg moved quietly through America, its golden surface hiding stories of empresses, revolutions, and the collapse of empires, waiting for the day someone would finally see it for what it truly was. But fate had one more impossible twist in store, and it would play out in the most unlikely place imaginable. The kitchen counterfortune. Picture this, a scrap metal dealer in the American Midwest, sitting at his kitchen table, debt climbing, looking down at what he thinks might be the worst purchase of his life. He had paid around $14,000 for a small golden egg at a local antique mart, hoping to melt it down for a quick profit on its scrap value. The math didn't add up. The egg wasn't heavy enough, and the gold alone wouldn't even cover his costs. For years, the egg sat there, a painful reminder that he had gambled and lost. a gilded paperweight on a kitchen counter next to coffee mugs and cupcake trays. He tried selling it to pawn shops and scrap buyers, but no one was willing to give him even close to what he had paid. One evening, restless and frustrated, he decided to take one last look before cutting his losses. He noticed the tiny Vacheron Constantin watch tucked inside the egg's delicate shell and decided to Google two words together, egg and Vacheron Constantin. What popped up on his screen next would flip his world upside down. The search led him to an article in The Telegraph detailing the lost Third Imperial Fabergé egg, complete with photos of a gold egg containing a Vacheron Constantin watch, last seen before the Russian Revolution and missing for more than 80 years. His heart must have raced as he scrolled, comparing the images on his phone with the egg in front of him. The patterns, the sapphire, the precise hinges, they all matched. This was not a mistake. This was a miracle sitting in his kitchen, worth more than $33 million if it was truly what he now suspected. Imagine that moment. 1 second, he was worried about paying bills, and the next, he was holding a piece of Imperial Russian history that collectors and museums around the world had been searching for since the 1920s. He reached out to Kieran McCarthy, a Fabergé expert from Wartsky in London, who had studied the Third Imperial Egg extensively and had been quoted in that same article. McCarthy received the email and, recognizing the photos, immediately understood the magnitude of what was being offered. The decision was made quickly. McCarthy boarded a flight to America, prepared to authenticate the piece in person. You can picture him arriving at the modest Midwestern home, stepping into the kitchen, where the egg sat quietly under the soft yellow light, waiting for the moment it would finally be seen for what it truly was. McCarthy later described the moment of authentication as spine-tingling, realizing that the missing egg, thought to have been lost forever, had been sitting in a kitchen next to cupcakes in Middle America. The egg was indeed the Third Imperial Fabergé egg, created in 1887 for Tsar Alexander III to give to his wife, Maria Feodorovna, for Easter. It had survived the revolution, the Soviet sell-offs, and years of obscurity, only to reappear thanks to a Google search that connected a scrap dealer to a lost chapter of history. Once burdened by his purchase, the dealer found himself in possession of a treasure worth more than $33 million, a fortune that would change his life forever. Have you ever Googled something that completely changed your life? However, this wasn't just about one man's incredible luck.
Search for Fabergé egg on eBay, and you'll see hundreds of what you might call faux.
This discovery would reshape everything we thought we knew about finding lost treasures. How, you ask? Digital guardians of lost worlds. In an age where a simple Google search can unlock imperial mysteries, we are witnessing something remarkable. Technology, once seen as a distraction from history, is becoming the unexpected guardian of world heritage. That Fabergé egg was lost for more than 80 years, and now it has found its way home because a scrap metal dealer typed 2 words into a search bar one quiet night. And that single action proves something historians are now studying closely. The digital world is giving lost artifacts a second chance to be seen, studied, and protected. Across the globe, museums and researchers are digitizing artifacts, entire archives, and even endangered sites, uploading them into virtual spaces where anyone with a phone can explore them. This isn't just about convenience. A study in Nature explained how the metaverse and advanced scanning tools now preserve cultural heritage at a level we could only dream of a decade ago. High-resolution images and 3D models mean that even if a site is damaged by conflict or climate, its knowledge and experience remain alive. And it is not just museums leading the charge. Platforms like LinkedIn and open research databases are creating digital trails for artifacts, helping reunite stolen or misplaced cultural treasures with their rightful histories. One researcher described it as turning the internet into a living archive, one where anyone can stumble onto history and, with the right curiosity, become part of preserving it. The Fabergé egg story is the perfect example. A moment of digital curiosity turned a kitchen counter mistake into a $33 million recovery for cultural history. Can you imagine what else could be out there, quietly waiting behind a dusty cabinet or hiding in plain sight on a local auction site, needing only the right search terms typed into Google to come back into the light? We are living in a time when cultural heritage is no longer trapped behind velvet ropes in museums or locked away in archives that few people can access. It is being scanned, catalogued, and uploaded, turning every curious viewer into a potential guardian of the past. One researcher on digital heritage preservation called this a democratization of discovery, allowing everyday people to participate in treasure hunts that once belonged only to scholars or collectors. The next major find could easily come from a teenager scrolling Reddit, a student cross-checking an image on their phone, or someone like that scrap dealer who simply wanted to know what kind of watch was hidden inside an egg. Now, what if there are other imperial treasures hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to type the right search terms? This Fabergé egg discovery is not just a one-off miracle. It is a sign that the digital age has opened a new chapter in protecting and recovering our shared history. And if one impossible discovery can happen, what about the others that are still out there? The hunt continues. With 7 Imperial Fabergé eggs still vanishing without a trace, treasure hunters around the world are asking the same question. Where will the next kitchen counter miracle happen? Imagine this. More than 150 years ago, these eggs were crafted under candlelight for Russian tsars, each one holding secrets, precious stones, and a promise of legacy. But after the revolution, after palaces were stormed and treasures scattered, some eggs slipped into the shadows. Today, official Fabergé records confirm that 7 of these imperial eggs remain missing, unaccounted for despite decades of searching by collectors, museums, and auction houses. It is not for lack of trying, though. A few years ago, rumors surfaced of a possible egg hidden inside a European bank vault, only for it to turn out to be a lookalike. Another time, an estate sale in America offered a gold egg-shaped object, sparking excitement. Still, it lacked the intricate mechanisms and marks that define a true Fabergé creation. Each of these moments, while disappointing for those hoping for a discovery, adds to the growing map of where the real eggs could be hiding. Experts at Fabergé have explained that the chances of these eggs surviving are still strong. These are not fragile artifacts that crumble easily. They were built to endure, crafted with layers of enamel, gold, and gemstone detailing that can last for centuries. According to recent analysis, the eggs could be anywhere, from private homes where the owners have no idea what sits on their shelves, to dusty boxes in small-town antique shops, or even deep inside government storage units catalogued under vague inventory numbers. There is now a quiet, global community of Fabergé hunters, people who dedicate hours cross-referencing old auction records with museum archives, using high-resolution online catalogues, and, yes, sometimes just following a gut feeling when they see something unusual at a flea market. One expert described it as a race against time, but a race fueled by hope, not desperation. And here is where the story opens to every single person watching this video. Could one of these lost imperial treasures be sitting in your attic right now? The digital age has democratized this hunt, giving anyone the tools to cross-check, research, and reach out to experts in seconds. It is not just billionaires or elite collectors who can find these treasures anymore. The next discovery could come from a college student on a lunch break, a retiree cleaning out a garage, or a teenager who gets curious and types the right words into a search bar. But perhaps the real treasure is not just in finding these eggs. It is in what their incredible journey tells us about ourselves. The journey of the Third Imperial Egg shows us something powerful. From palace halls to a quiet kitchen counter, beauty and history have a way of surviving against impossible odds, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves again. This is a reminder that the greatest treasures can rest in the humblest places. If you have ever stumbled upon something you never expected, share your experience down below. But until next time, stay curious.